All right, Tavonga, it's a great pleasure to have you here as we begin talking about cybersecurity compliance, specifically in the financial space. We're all curious, and most of us really don't come from a compliance background. We haven't done any compliance-related projects, and if you can just break that down and help us understand what it is, what compliance is all about, and maybe some of us can, have that interest now kick in and then see if it's something that we can consider going forth in our career.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for inviting me to come and share with fellow professionals
It's a
my
pleasure.
insight from my experience from the consulting background. I'm Tavonga. Currently, I'm with PwC South Africa. I'm a
Great.
cybersecurity manager in the compliance space and governance. So I prepared this presentation. I didn't make it long. What I actually value most in presentation is discussions and engagements. So
Right.
I'll just use these slides as a guide of our discussion point. So please don't hesitate to interject or to stop me if probably we need an area of clarification.
Mm.
So I think I've done the presentation. So basically, what has happened, you are going to see that the financial sector, just like any other sector, manufacturing,
Yes.
mining, and all that, they're actually facing a diverse range of cybersecurity threats. And as such, the financial sector, because of its sensitivity, is a
Mhm.
very highly complexly regulated in space. And as
Mm.
such, you are going to see that we have different frameworks that these banks they need to be compliant with. So what I've done is from the peak, picked the FFIEC framework
Yes.
because of its overarching controls and benefits. I know most of the professionals here, they're quite familiar with the PCI DSS, so I thought like it will not add much value. So
Great.
I'm going to zoom in on the FFIEC. This particular framework is actually an American framework, but
Huh?
because of the dependencies, most of our banks here in South Africa or Africa in general, they do have to comply to the
I was
FFIEC
I was
framework.
going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that, Taonga, because I was thinking, is this the Federal Financial Institutional Examination Council?
Precisely,
Um,
yes.
oh, okay. So it does have tentacles or reach into Africa. Does it also have influence into the European space or the Asian space? What is the scope like?
Yeah, I think in Europe, I think they
Yeah.
do have an equivalent to that, but in
Okay.
Africa, they actually take it as it is because of the dependencies with
Okay.
US companies that are investing here and stuff like that. So that
Uh-huh.
becomes a requirement for investors, financial investors, to check to see if indeed an institution is compliant to that framework.
I
So I
hear you.
just felt like I think there will be a bit of some value if probably
Bring it on,
I just
man.
try,
Yes.
yes, to unpack it. So I think a threat which actually face the financial institutions. So
Uh-huh.
basically, I think we all agree that these threats are almost the same, regardless of which industry you are. Like what I said earlier on, manufacturing, mining, finance, and whatever. So these are common threats that are there. They are not selective of the industry. But now what we are seeing is that these threats are actually continuously evolving, and we are looking at cyber criminals actually employing some actually sophisticated techniques to try to exploit these vulnerabilities. Now, when we are looking at these particular frameworks, they are trying to put in measures to actually limit the risk or the exposure of data and critical systems within banking or financial institutions.
Mm.
Um, we have advanced threat, persistent threats, insider threats, third-party
Yes.
risks. We have legacy systems, vulnerabilities that we do have. And the other threat is actually compliance complexity. Since I said that within financial sector, there is a lot of regulations that needs to be added to. So obviously that complexity actually can actually leave some kind of some blind spots within the environment. And that also might also result in big financial losses and penalties.
Right.
Okay. So the other thing that I would want to talk about is the regulatory landscape within the financial sector. So the financial sector operates within a very complex regulatory environment, like what I said earlier on, and actually it mandates stringent cybersecurity measures. And the thing about compliance within the financial sector is not optional, right? It's mandatory. So we are going to look at key regulations that are actually impacting the industry. So we have the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council. This is specifically an American framework, which we adopt here in Africa. We've got the best three, we've got the PCI DSS. I think this is the most common of them all. Then we have the General Data Protection Regulation. Here in South Africa, we have POPIA, but obviously we can see it's a subset of the GDPR. Yeah. So the compliance with actually these regulations is imperative for maintaining the security and the integrity of financial systems. And you're actually going to see that sometimes not only the need for compliance to maintain security and integrity, even operational licenses for these financial institutions are also tied to compliance with these frameworks. Then we're looking at, yes, definitely. So that's why you see that banks and financial institutions, they don't compromise on compliance with the regulations, because their trading license, their operation license, they make it a requirement that indeed they are seen and they adhere to the compliance of these frameworks that have been developed.
Right.
Then, yes. So each regulatory body imposes specific compliance requirements on banks, but I was talking specifically on banks. So I talked about the FFIEC, which actually set the standards for information security and information sharing. With the PCI DSS, that is obviously more focused on the protection of cardholder data and preventing data breaches of customers. We have the best three, which focuses on capital adequacy and risk management. We just have to have good reserves for you to start to actually operate. Then we have the GDPR that mandates the protection of personal data, and understanding the adherence of these requirements is quite crucial actually for any cybersecurity or any IT professional, because you need to understand what are these frameworks, what do they zoom into, what are they trying to address. So as a security professional, it's quite critical to know, because some of the times when we actually go to clients, they might also want you to give them probably some input in terms of, okay, fine, we have this wide range of frameworks that we get. Which one do we have to pick? So as a cybersecurity professional, you need to have deeper insights to look at the pros and cons of each and every framework that is available.
Great.
So on this one, I now decided to say, okay, fine, let me zoom in the Federal Financial Institution Examination and Council framework and the components that it is made up of and what does each component do. So at a high level, the FFI framework provides a structured approach to cybersecurity compliance within the financial sector. It actually serves as a comprehensive guide for financial institutions, offering guidelines and best practices to manage and mitigate risks, not only effectively, but also systematically. Then we're also looking at the FFIEC is a facilitator of information sharing and coordination among member agencies. When we're talking about member agencies, we're talking about organizations within the financial space.
Okay.
Yes, so this collaborative approach is essential for actually addressing common emerging risks. We're also looking at promoting consistency in terms of regulatory interpretations. We're looking at responding to changes within the financial industry. The framework emphasizes key components such as risk assessment. Then we're looking at the cybersecurity assessment tool and the uniform rating system. This all is a holistic approach to try to make sure that all the necessary controls that are being evaluated within a financial setup, they are within that level of security posture, which is acceptable, at least acceptable.
Great.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm just
Sure.
thinking right now, and as you speak, it's like my mind is running through, and I'm trying to think. You spoke of the POPIA. I'm a little bit familiar with the POPIA Act, and I'm thinking if the POPIA is a subset of GDPR, which of course it is, even the way it is laid out, is it sufficient for an organization which is supposed to be POPIA Act to only be GDPR compliant? Or are we required to be GDPR compliant and POPIA Act in order for us to be wholly compliant? How does that work?
Okay, so let's say I'll give you an example of, let's say, maybe we look at an academic institution like a university, we say, right?
Yes.
Like here in South Africa. So, sorry, universities, they do have students from Africa, and they do have
Correct.
students from the EU countries. Now,
Yes.
what happens now is an institution should be both POPIA and GDPR. That is, if it is processing any information about an EU resident. That becomes,
right.
Yes, that becomes mandatory, right? But if probably we are saying a university is only enrolling South African students, POPIA will suffice.
Okay, great.
That's how it works. Yep. Then when you're looking at the FFIEC framework, it is actually three main components. We have the risk assessment part, the cybersecurity assessment tool, and the uniform rating system. These are the three pillars of the FFIEC. So I'm going to actually dive deep into the risk assessment. What is it exactly that we're talking about when we're talking about risk assessment within the FFIEC framework? I'm going to also look at the other two as well, to look at why do we need that, and the whole picture of what are these three pillars do provide to institutions, to the customers whose information is being kept by these institutions. So on risk assessment of the FFIEC framework, we are looking at the risk assessment being the cornerstone of this particular framework. It actually involves the systematic analysis of potential cybersecurity risks, which actually we consider the institution's assets, the vulnerabilities, and the threats.
Okay.
So the one thing about the risk assessment of the FFIEC, this is quite a holistic analysis, in the sense that it does help any individual, you can be an assessor, to actually conduct a comprehensive examination of the cybersecurity risks across all the facets of the institution. I think I do have probably a sample of working paper of the different categories of the risks that probably you can, probably when you're trying to see as an assessor to an organization.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. Then the other thing about the risk assessment, it has both qualitative and quantitative analysis. That is quite good because it gives the whole picture of the risks that are there in terms of the assessment. So by blending qualitative data and qualitative insights to assess the likelihood and the impact of the potential risks, we do get a more complete overview of the risk profile of an organization. Then the other thing that we also do is within the risk assessment pillar is this scenario planning, which is actually the anticipation and the preparation of various cyber threat scenarios to actually enhance proactive risk mitigation. What we are trying to do here is we are trying to move away or to gravitate from a reactive risk mitigation. We are trying to be more proactive. So that is why we are having these simulations to say, if this happens, what would we do? So that is all what we do. We are trying to be more proactive in our risk mitigation approach. Then the second pillar is the cybersecurity assessment tool. It's quite a handy tool that we do use within the FFIEC framework. So the cybersecurity assessment tool is actually a standardized tool that is designed to evaluate and to enhance any institution's cybersecurity posture It does facilitate self-assessments and alignment with industry-based standards. And the good thing about this cyber security assessment too, it also does have some modules that can actually have some frameworks like CIS and stuff like that, right? They are adding more modules to it. So that is the good thing about that. Then the other thing about this the cyber assessment tool, which we refer to as the CAT, is the comprehensive evaluation that it does offer in terms of assessment of the institution's cybersecurity maturity across the 5 domains, which are specifically the cyber risk management and oversight, in terms of threat intelligence, sharing and collaboration. We're going to look at the cybersecurity controls that we do have, external dependencies management. That is also, we're looking at the third-party risk management, third-party, fourth-party risk management, upstream risks. Then we're going to look at the cyber incident management and resilience. So these are the 5 domains which we do base our evaluations on. Then the other thing about the cyber assessment tool is the scalable approach, whereby we are leveraging from its flexibility, which actually allows institutions of all different kinds of sizes to actually perform their risk evaluation. It's quite a scalable tool. You can do one branch, you can do 30 different branches and stuff like that. That is also one thing about this tool. Then,
okay. So you can use it more like a template?
Yes, there is a template, then you can actually do a rollout. You can do one as a pilot, then after that, you can actually roll out to the bigger audience in terms of probably branches or whatever you might have within an organization. Yeah. Then also, this assessment tool also emphasizes on continuous improvement, whereby it encourages a cycle of assessments, mitigation, and improvement to adapt to the evolving cyber threats. You can actually do the assessment, like let's say today, it keeps your scores. Then you can actually do maybe quarterly. It will be tracking to see, okay, fine, the last assessment, where were the gaps? Now, were those gaps addressed? And is there any improvement? Or probably there is a regression, and actually there will be dashboards that you can actually see and leverage for. That is the powerful tool out there. So you can actually enhance, trying to just make sure that the previous audit or assessment is always addressed, and by then you are actually improving a portion in that sense.
I'm just curious, Tavonga. This cybersecurity assessment tool, I'm pretty sure others will also maybe come in later when we open this for questions. This cybersecurity assessment tool, does it help in any way to detect fraudulent acts within a financial institution? Is it able to detect that John embezzled funds and carried out some acts of fraud?
Yes, it does. You're going to see that when you're now going granular on those 5 domains we are going to look at things like fraud and stuff like that. Those are some of the things that we do look into. So it is covered in those 5 domains. You see that these 5 domains are going to break them down into granular subdomains. And issues of frauds, they are on top priorities of most, if not all, financial institutions.
That's right.
Right. Then we have the uniform rating system. The uniform rating system is actually a standardized approach for assessing and communicating the overall cybersecurity posture of financial institutions. It provides a consistent evaluation framework. So the interdependence that do exist among financial institutions, right? And this interdependence, most of it is based on peer review and peer trust. So as such, we need to have a standardized way of evaluating the cybersecurity posture of one organization, so that at least they can attest when they want to trade or to collaborate with other ones, to say, look, this is how we are faring, and how are you faring? They say, okay, fine, we're on the same level. Then at least we can actually allow you either to access some of the components of our system without the fear of probably bringing in some risks which are inherent from another organization that might not have stringent cybersecurity controls. Yeah. So within this uniform rating system that we get in the third pillar of the FFIEC framework. One of the
Yes.
good things about it is it has comprehensive metrics that is actually utilizing a set of metrics to evaluate an institution's overall condition, encompassing capital adequacy, asset quality, management quality, earnings, liquidity, and sensitivity to market risks. We're also looking at the consistency in valuation, ensuring a uniform method of assessments across all financial institutions, enabling a comparability and standardized reporting. We're also using the uniform rating system as allowing for adjustments in response to changes in the cybersecurity landscape and the institution's risk profile. So this is the third pillar within the FFIEC. Now we are trying to standardize. We are trying to say, okay, fine, bring your report card. How are you faring? How are you doing before we can do business with you? Right? Then I think what I was thinking is probably maybe, I'm not sure if I should share maybe a symbol of one or probably some working papers when you're doing your assessment. What is really, how does
Okay.
it work?
I had an idea around that. What I've
Yes.
done is in the message or the chat area, I'm going
Yep.
to share your LinkedIn profile. And then I'm pretty sure that someone would like to connect and follow you and, be able to get inspiration from that. So if we don't really have so much time to delve into that, maybe you can show us just to have some
Okay.
idea of how it looks. And then we can
Oh,
open up the floor for those who might have some questions.
definitely. Thank you, John.
Sure.
So basically, when you're looking at the FFIEC, we look at the categories, right? We have technologies and connection types, delivery channels, online mobile products, technology services, organizational characteristics, and external threat.
Mm.
Then we have inherent risk levels, minimum, least, moderate, that we are going to have. Then we also
Okay.
have to put the average risk score. This average is a peer average, right? From peers.
Yes.
Okay. Then you have the organization's risk score and probably the number of questions per that particular category.
This is great. So I'm just looking at these scores. I was wondering, you don't have anything critical? you have moderate, you have minimal, or is that the standardized scoring system that they provide?
This one I just sanitized it, John. I
Oh,
just
okay,
sanitized
okay.
it, yeah, for illustrative
Thank you.
purposes. Yeah.
Okay,
I just
okay,
I just tried to sanitize another working paper that I was working on for
great.
just for illustration. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So basically, we look at potential maturity levels. We do
Yes.
have, if you're going to look at this, we have got inherent risk levels that we do have least up to the most. Then we do have the maturity levels from the baseline evolving up to the one that is optimized that we refer to within this framework as the innovation level,
Okay.
right? Now, what we'll do after we have done our assessment, we
Yes.
can actually come up with something like this, right?
Okay.
To look at exactly how an organization is faring. This
That's right.
is how we do, and this is how what we do present to the client. Yes. Then I hope maybe this one I've sanitized it. Okay, fine. Probably now when you are delving deep into it, right? For example, we were looking at categories like technologies and connection types, right?
Yes.
We'll be looking at controls like, okay, fine. What is the total number of internet service provider connection to each branch connection, right? Then we have to look at it. Okay, fine. Okay, that's more than that 3. Okay, no connections. Then we're looking at, so basically, I think using this, now
Yes.
we are feeling that. So this information that will be populating here, all these ones are controls that we're now looking at: wireless network access, also customers with dedicated connections. This we're trying to look at third-party risk management, right? If you see where we'll be coming, then
Yes. Yes.
Yes, then we look at internally hosted vendor developed applications supporting critical activities. Now, going down, I was actually supposed to show you this first because the one that I showed you initially is actually a summary of this.
Of what you're showing us. And this is exciting. This we can relate to, some of us.
Yes,
Beginning to see
yes.
the bigger picture. Yes.
Yeah, now, yes. Actually, this one is actually, we work it from this, right? Then
Okay.
we summarize here, right? So basically, that's when we are doing an assessment using the FFIEC. That's basically what we are doing. These are the controls that we look into. That's how we actually put our risk rating, and that's how we do calculate the risk and the overall risk posture of an organization.
Okay.
For example, this one should be a bank.
Yes.
Or not, this one actually was not a bank because obviously a bank should have some ATM services. So it was probably just probably one of these financial services which do not offer banking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So basically, this is what it is when we are doing compliance for financial institution using the FFIEC framework.
Wow. Tavonga, you spoke about third-party risk. And when you just brought this, I saw the idea of ISPs playing in and so on and so forth. Because I've always been thinking about how do you go about managing the risk that comes with maybe your upstream network provider or maybe your downstream company that you're providing a particular service. How do you manage that? Maybe as you answer that, those of you with questions, just raise up your hand, and then we can always bring in those questions and get some insight from Tavonga.
Okay, so third party is a very complicated what is it risk management. It's a bit complicated, but what normally organizations do
Yes.
is to force compliance. That's the best way you can actually manage third party risk, right? For example, to say for us to trade with you, you should be ISO 27001 compliant, right? Or for us to be able to be trading with you, we want to see that you were doing your penetration testing within your network at least twice a year. And can we see the result? Can we have some insights? You can actually block off some IP addresses and whatever that you have, but can we just have probably an executive summary of your last pen test? First, we want to see, did you do it? Then the second point is, how often do you do it? Then the last point is, can we have some visibility into the issues raised in that? That is, yes, that is how.
That just brings another question. I saw a paper of an organization. I think there were issues whereby they did not want to go further with a particular contract because they were afraid that if you give that kind of information, you're speaking of an executive summary, if you give it to a third-party company, maybe that data is sensitive into maybe in certain ways, and you're really concerned. How do you better sanitize data that is of that nature that we can see it without putting you as an organization at risk?
So basically, most of the time, apart from the sanitization, I think the other control that most organizations use is the issue of non-disclosure agreements, John, because business on its own is based on trust, right? So if I don't trust that you are going to honor the non-disclosure agreement, then obviously there's no point of me transacting with you, right? Yes,
that's right.
So basically, those are the controls in place to say organizations, they do sign NDAs, and they try obviously on their side to try to sanitize whatever probably might be of information of sensitive nature. Then they can put a layer of non-disclosure agreement as an administrative control.
Okay. There's a question from Delvin Kalpis. Is this framework, the FFIEC, mandatory like PCI DSS, where you have to do it also like, let's say, quarterly, or it's twice a year? Is it having that kind of power and influence?
Here, I think it's mandatory for financial institutions that trade with companies in the United States.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you are an organization like, let's say, EY, for example, or let's say, which example? I don't know which example to give, but let's say one of these health institutions operating in Africa. Like I remember Proud worked for an NGO, Doctors Without Borders, and they had, I think, some kind of work with American counterparts and so on. So it means for such, you would need to be compliant.
No, if we are talking about health, the health, normally they will be compliant with HIPAA.
With HIPAA, that's right.
Yes. For institutions that deal with medical records and stuff,
Yeah.
the framework that they will try to align and being compliant to is HIPAA. So you
Correct.
are most likely not to see FFIEC in the medical field, but HIPAA will be
correct.
more appropriate in such setups.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. How does one become certified to conduct these audits?
For these ones, normally I don't know. Outside, probably I might be lucky in the
Yes.
sense that because I work for a consulting company, they do
Correct.
give us exposure and training to facilitate assessment of these of this framework. I'm not sure outside the consulting firms how does it work. I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
I see. So it could be something that is easily done once you are inside as compared to something that you can do from outside.
I think so. But I think what they just want is you should be competent and you are certified to actually do that. What is it? That assessment. Let's say, for example, I leave PwC. As long as probably I'm now doing my own private practice. As long as I do have the certificate and it's current, still I can actually endorse and actually certify that I've seen the controls and I'm happy and I've given this rating, which they trust my discretion based on my experience and the training that I've received.
Wow. Okay. That is interesting. Any other questions? Do you have any questions? This is the compliance man that we rarely can have access to. So if we do not bring those questions now, of course, we can always reach out to him on LinkedIn and try to ask questions here and there. But I'm really curious about compliance because a lot of us come in with technical skills, but when it comes to the compliance side of things, there isn't much that we're able to actually lift up and participate on. If you got any questions, please come through. On the scale, on the scale of let's say 1 to 10, how often do you do very complex compliance-related tasks that you would feel they're out of your scope personally in your everyday job? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, does it happen often? Is this a very trivial, very complex area to operate in, or is this something that is achievable? What is your day like at PwC?
Okay, I wanted to say something very fundamental about this particular framework, John, right? This particular framework, I think it was last updated in 2013, right?
Okay.
Now, the major problem that we are finding is we are actually doing our day-to-day operations and assessment is that now it's no longer covers some of the areas that we do feel should be covered. Things like cloud computing, things like cryptocurrency, right?
AI.
Yes. So within those controls, we would feel actually like now, I'm sure probably there is probably a white paper or something that is coming up to try to update this particular framework, whereby we feel like it's lagging behind in terms of trying to match with the technology, because we are trying to look at some banks that are now trading or they're now accepting cryptocurrency. Do we have controls to actually look into probably the ledgers for cryptocurrency, how secure they are? We're looking at cloud security, how secure their systems and stuff like that, how compliant they are, what type of cloud offerings do they use. So these are some of the things that probably we do feel like limit us as cybersecurity professionals to comprehensively give the security posture of an organization, necessarily from the fact that this particular framework Probably the turnaround time is a bit too long. I think it's about 7 years now. But
Hmm.
as we communicate to the guys, they do say the update is coming soon. But
Wow.
when, I'm not quite sure. Yeah,
Okay, that to me it sounds like having a vulnerability under the CVEs and not having a patch from the manufacturer of the product.
definitely.
So how do you work around that? You realize there's a loophole here when it
Yeah.
comes to,
So
let's
what we
say,
do now here is we actually come up front, right, with them to say we are going to do this, but there are some additional controls that we're going to assess. So most of the time,
okay,
clients actually do appreciate that. They're actually happy to know that we are actually doing due diligence, because we also leverage off some frameworks like the ISO 27002 and 001, which
yes,
actually now talk about cloud computing and stuff like that. Then there is also NIST, which does
correct.
talk to cryptocurrency, right, or blockchaining and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
we just try to just borrow from these other frameworks and try to put it there, and we put to say, you know what, this is the holistic view of your
Mm,
estate that we have
mm.
assumed.
Wow.
So that's how we approach it.
All right. Well, it seems there are no more questions, Tavonga. I really appreciate you coming here, but here's my final question.
Yes, John.
I don't know if you have been following the rand manipulation. I've been seeing that this 1 trillion rand a day story of the banks conniving against the government of South Africa. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a trending news whereby
Yeah.
large banks in South Africa have been manipulating about 1 trillion rand to, move the funds from South Africa to the external reserves abroad and so on and so forth. Does it mean that you people, when you're doing this compliance auditing and, projects, does it mean you also have a chance to overlook these kind of findings? Or what is your response to that? How does this happen that you do a compliance assessment, but then
Yep.
years later it is figured out that a bank has been embezzling funds and putting them in reserves in Switzerland or somewhere? I don't know. How does that happen?
I think I just want to be honest, right? My thumbs up. I
Yes.
think maybe the limitation, right, is on us
Yes.
as technological guys to actually understand the intricacies of probably finance or accounting
Mm,
dynamics. I think
okay.
that's that's the
A
shortfall to say
limitation there.
that
Wow.
that's the limitation. When I'm there, I'm looking for, okay, fine. Uh, what type of cloud service provider did you log? Can you zoom in the security center? What are the
Yes.
controls and stuff like that, right? So
Wow.
uh, the money that probably might be siphoned off probably is a million. Probably now it needs a regulator to say, is there a business need for that? Yes, the business that is trying to siphon the money
Hmm.
has a business need or cleared by the Reserve Bank and stuff like that. So
Correct.
probably that oversight at a technological level we might not have. What we
I
can check
understand.
probably would be probably volumes of large amounts being siphoned out. But to check the
True.
legitimacy, we can just raise a flag to say, we think there's something,
Hmm.
right? But probably to now delve to say how, I mean, authentic those transactions are, it will need another party to come and say, sit down and see, like, okay, fine, this is what is
I
happening.
hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Tonga, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate this is invaluable information that we couldn't get from anywhere else. Or Delvin Cowpies says, is there a possibility of being bribed when you're doing an assessment? That's a good question.
So what we do, Brian, is one of the first, the most important things that we do, especially in the
Yes.
consulting is big on independence. We actually sign forms to show and declare that we'll be independent in our assessment, right? Then the
Mm.
other thing is there are controls, like we are not allowed to get invitations for lunch or to get any gift, even if it's for 2 rand, right?
Okay.
All these controls are to try to curb
Yes.
possibilities of bribing or conflicts of interest. For
Hmm.
example, I also have to make sure that if probably my wife is working for Bank C, I cannot
Yes.
go and do an assessment at Bank C because there's a
Oh,
conflict of interest. Probably my wife is the IT auditor there, and I
Correct.
know if probably maybe I expose some of the things, my wife will be fired. So
That's right.
there's those conflict of interest. There's the independent checks that we do to try to limit bribing. We are not allowed to get gifts.
Yes.
We are not allowed to be taken out for lunch. We are not allowed to be invited to play golf with clients.
Wow. All right, Delvin, that's for you. Maybe you are an auditor somewhere and you're thinking, well, you could you could use an envelope to bypass the audit. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. Tonga, really appreciate it. This has really been great for us. And just me looking at this Excel sheet that you are, having here, please share it with me via email. I'll also share it with my colleagues on the group, and then we can also benefit from this kind of information. We rarely have access to this, to be honest with you. And sometimes as tech people, oh, Delvin is saying this was good for his CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner exam. Great. So as tech people, honestly, most times we're just talking firewalls, we're talking logs, we're talking cloud this, cloud that. And when we mention compliance, it seems like, some peripheral arm somewhere, which you don't even know much about. So this really gives us a lot of insight. We really appreciate it, Tonga. Thank you for your time. And hopefully you accept another invitation in future.
Definitely, I will. Thank you so much, team, for being with me. I hope the presentation had given you some insights here and there. Look forward for more invitations.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thanks, team.
All right, bye. Thanks, team. Bye.
Sure.